Hi, I'm Wes Doss from Khyber. I have both a law enforcement and a military background, so it gives me sort of a unique perspective on things, seeing it from both sides of the fence. Not so much in terms of just the training side, but also the performance side, the human performance side, and the human aspects of things. We're in a really weird era right now as it applies to law enforcement. And I'm not to suggest that we haven't always had, weirdness in all our eras. I mean, we've always been a career field that has been kind of at the limelight of controversy and discontent and at times accolades, and it just kind of all depends on how people feel about us and what's relevant and what's new and what's current in the news. But right now, like no other time in history, we are losing our livelihoods, we're getting accused of things, we're getting incarcerated, we're getting sued, we're losing our jobs. There's more controversy around us, warranted or unwarranted, than literally any other time in history. And if you really look at it from a big perspective, a larger picture, it's just a nasty, unending state of perpetual motion. We've got, the public gets upset based on how something is portrayed in the news. And I understand that, emotions being what emotions are, people tend to rise to those emotions. I understand that. I understand that completely. Okay. Then the agency goes back and at some point in time seeks greater funding from either their city council or their county board of supervisors or the state or whoever it is that their funding source is, based on taxes and whatnot. And because the public's upset, the elected bodies above that agency aren't so willing to give up any additional funding until that agency, quote unquote, cleans up their act. Well, then we go a year, 2 years, 3 years in an underfunded role. And then you couple with that, because of what's happened in the news, there's less people wanting to be law enforcement officers, so the hiring pool suddenly changes. And now we're at an era where that has dwindled to such a minute level that hiring practices have begun to be affected in order to bring more people in, because we're having a hard time attracting people into the career field. And then we're bringing people in that quite likely we wouldn't have even considered 5, 10, 15, or 20 years ago, based on who they are and how they performed during that initial hiring process. But we're hurting for bodies, so we're calling them up and asking if they still want a job. And then they get out on the street. And then they become a party to something that causes more public discontent. And then to add to that, in order to push as many bodies as we've got through an academy setting, we are starting to alter our training standards and making it easier for people to graduate, making it easier for people to get out on the street to fill those empty spots that are out there. And it's just continuously cycles through this process. And we're now starting to see in many states, in many locations, the end result of that hiring process and that diminished training process. We have got across the board, you've got jurisdictions that have gone to rifles as an example and have minimized their patrol rifle training down to an 8-hour block of instruction and expect that this high liability device, that somebody has been able to master that in 8 long hours. I was in the Army, I had just under 2 weeks, and constituents of mine that were Marines had just over 2 weeks to learn how to run a platform they'd never seen before. And now we're taking somebody off the street who has never handled one other than, as a character in, Call of Duty, and now suddenly they're a master of this device. So we're starting to see those end results play themselves out, and it makes the situations worse, ultimately. Where the goal should be to have quality employees, quality officers in a quality work environment, trained beyond whatever minimal standards are set in order to have a better, efficient, and more productive individuals out there, which would conversely make the public a lot happier with how they see law enforcement. But again, it tends to be this disruptive cycle that just keeps going and going and going, with almost no end in sight. At some point in time, it's going to have to cycle back, but it's going to take a real deep concerted effort on the part of agencies, organizations, and the public's going to have to get involved at some point.